Hey friends, today we're going to talk about solving multi-step inequalities. So to get started, you need to have a piece of paper and a pencil and a calculator. And today we're talking about the alligator. The alligator always eats the bigger number, and we have rules on how to solve multi-step equalities. Treat it just like an equation. Do the same steps to get your constants all by itself and your coefficients with variables all by itself before you can isolate for the variable. The only difference is this is when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, you need to recall that you have to flip the inequality symbol to make your graph correct. So we're going to practice this, getting started right now. So multi-step inequalities involve more than one step. That's what makes it multi. So if you're doing it in one step, it's not correct, so you need to make sure you take your time to do multiple steps. Goal again is to get the variable by itself and a number on the other side with an inequality sign in the middle. Your inequality signs are less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. All of your symbols will be like this. There will be no equal signs. So this is the first example. When you're doing this problem, you need to treat this like an equal sign. So this is where your squiggly line, stupid line, that's, you have to work on one side of the equation and the other. So you want to get all your terms, all your constants on the same side. So I do the inverse operation. I need to add 6 on both sides. And when I do that, I bring down 5y. I keep my inequality symbol the same, and 19 plus 6 gets you 25. Now to solve, you treat this just like an equality. You divide both sides by 5, and since you're dividing by a positive number, your inequality symbol stays the same direction. Y is greater than 5. Now recall when you graph these, you have to have a number line with 3 tick marks at least, and you have to have numbers on it. I always put the number that's here in the middle, and then I do one greater and one less. You can do different numbers. You can go up by 2s or down by 2s, 5s, 10s. You just have to have an even interval. You also need a y underneath the number line. It can go on the left or the right side. Since this is a greater than symbol, you need to have an open circle at 5. Y is greater than 5. So you ask yourself, what numbers are greater than 5? If you said 6, that tells you which direction to shade. So your solution set is all numbers greater than 5. So this is what your graph will look like. Pause the video if you need to. Make sure this is written down and go on to the next problem. The next problem on your sheet looks like this. If you don't have a sheet, you can just write it down. 12x plus 1 is greater than 13. Pause if needed. To start, we need to get rid of this positive 1. By subtracting 1 from both sides, we can do that to get our coefficient with our variable is greater than 13 minus 1 gets you 12. Now we divide both sides by your coefficient to get your variable all by itself. X here is greater than 1. So to graph this, again, you need to have at least 3 numbers on your ticks, at least 3 tick marks. Your variable, your numbers labeled, 0, 1, and 2 is what I'm going to do. You can do different numbers. Since it is a symbol that does not have an underline, I need an open circle at 1. X is greater than 1. The alligator is eating the x, so that means x can be anything greater than 1. So pick a number to make x true. You can pick 10. Where is 10? Well, 10 is over here. So that means so is 9, so is 8, so is 7, so is 2. 2 is greater than 1. So that means all your solutions to the right, infinite solutions, as long as it's greater than 1, makes this inequality true. Pause the video if needed. Now in this equation you have an or equals 2, so I needed to add that because I didn't have that symbol with me when I was making this. So you start the same way. You need to isolate, get your numbers on the same sides. I'm going to start by subtracting 6 from both sides. Bring down your coefficient, negative 15x is less than or equal to 30. When you're dividing, though, on this one, you're dividing by a negative number. And recall that when you divide by a negative, you need to reverse your inequality symbol. So instead of being less than or equal to, it switches to greater than or equal to, and 30 divided by negative 15 is negative 2. So this is your inequality that you're graphing. Remember, you have to reverse the sign whenever you multiply or divide by a negative. Reverse or flip. So when you go to graph this inequality, you have your tick marks. You have negative 2. Remember, 1 greater would be negative 1, closer to 0, and 1 smaller would be negative 3. You have your x. This one is underlined, so that means you have to have a shaded in circle because it includes negative 2. And x is greater than negative 2. Numbers greater than negative 2 would be like 10. So this is the direction that you would shade. You put your arrow on the end. So any solution that's greater than negative 2 or equal to negative 2 will make this inequality true. In the next one here, we're going to add an or equal to as well. And you start by subtracting 7 from both sides. So pause the video and see if you can do this on your own. So when you're doing this, you bring down your negative 19x, and it is greater than or equal to 57. And from here, you need to divide both sides by a negative 19. And when you divide by a negative number, you reverse your inequality symbol. Sorry about that. And when you reverse your inequality symbol, 57 divided by negative 19 is negative 3. So when you go to graph this, you're going to put 3 tick marks.
Will the following students?
So when we graph this inequality, we're going to have negative 3 here, a negative 4, a negative 2. X is down here. It's going to be closed circle at negative 3. X is smaller than negative 3. So the numbers that are smaller than negative 3 go to the left. Think of negative 10. That is smaller. So that is the solution to your inequality. This next one again needs an underline. When you solve this problem, you start by adding 4 to both sides. You get 36x is greater than or equal to 0. After that, when you divide by 36, it's a positive number, so you do not flip the inequality symbol. X is greater than or equal to 0. So when you go to graph this solution, you have your number line, at least 3 ticks, 0, 1, and negative 1. Close circle at 0, and X is anything greater than 0, so you shade to the right. So in this one, Jerry can carry up to 27 pounds in his backpack. That means he can't carry any more than 27. 27 will be our greatest number here. So your alligator is going to eat your greatest number. He can carry up to that, so I'm going to put an underline underneath it because he can carry 27. If each book, I'm going to let that be B, weighs 5 pounds, that means I'm going to interpret it as 5 times each book, 5B. And he has 2 pounds, so that's an additional 2 pounds that he has in his backpack. How many books can he carry? We just wrote an inequality to represent this situation, and now I'm going to solve and graph my solution. I start by isolating my numbers. I'm going to minus 2 on both sides to get my variable all alone. My inequality symbol, so when I subtract 27 minus 2, I get 25. 5b carries down. I divide both sides by 5, and since I'm dividing by a positive number, my inequality sign stays exactly the same. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. 5 is greater than or equal to b. So when I go to graph this, I cannot shade in. So let me do it over here so you can see it. And the reason why you can't shade it in is because you cannot have partial books in your backpack. So he can carry 5 books. 5 is the biggest number he could carry. So when you think of your number line, I'm going to extend this down to 3, 2, 1, and 0. And when I graph this, I'm going to just put dots on my whole numbers because he cannot carry partial numbers. He could carry 0 books. I'm not going to go any further than 0 because he can't carry a negative amount of books either. So when you're graphing solutions to this system, you need to make sure you look at it and say B represents books. I can't have parts of books, so I can only have whole numbers on my graph. So this is the solution to this inequality. You cannot shade it in. Hey, perfect timing. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here.